Cheri, thank you so much for coming on today. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Very thrilled to be here to have a chat with you today.
Today's episode is about imposter syndrome and working in a male-dominated industry. And Cheri works in predominantly male industry. Yeah. You recruit into the IT tech space, don't you?
Yep, correct. Yep, so very heavily male-dominated. Yep.
Yeah. And so imposter syndrome, I think, obviously affects both women and men.
Of course, yeah.
But how would you define imposter syndrome?
Okay, so funny you should say that. I actually did a little Google search on a definition of imposter syndrome because I actually find it really challenging to describe what it is. So I'm going to tell you what come up, okay?
Okay.
So imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. It disproportionately affects high-achieving people who find it difficult to accept their accomplishments. And do you know what's also funny is I called one of my colleagues this morning to talk about having imposter syndrome about talking about imposter syndrome, which I thought was really ironic because we know what we are talking about and we value what we say and we have these conversations so regularly. So for me to actually call a colleague and say, oh my God, I'm talking about imposter syndrome and I actually have imposter syndrome talking about it just felt kind of ridiculous. So I resonate with that hugely. And you and I have a lot of experience in recruitment. So we should definitely back ourselves when it comes to imposter syndrome, but we just don't. So that was interesting for me to find that definition. I'm not sure what you've got to say about that, but especially being in a male-dominated industry and being female talking about tech, I can feel a bit like a fraud talking about it in detail when I'm, you know, with candidates who have a master's in IT and I don't. So my imposter syndrome in the recruitment industry in tech is pretty severe, to be honest.
Yeah. And you know what, on the flip side, I mostly work with females. I do have a lot of male candidates, but most of my candidates are female. Yeah. But I still feel the imposter syndrome too. And it's funny when you say that you Googled it because trying to describe what imposter syndrome is really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
It's not, and I don't even really know where it came from. I don't know who created imposter syndrome. It's a very clever definition, I suppose, of how a lot of us feel on a day-to-day basis in recruitment, in leadership, in management, in mentoring, you know, and it really comes down to our lack of confidence.
Yeah, it really does.
And understanding our value of what we bring to the conversation, what we bring to the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back to confidence as well, something that I've been almost going through a journey on is having confidence in speaking. Yeah. And I've actually reached out to a confident coach who talks about confidence when speaking. And you and I had this conversation a little while back about using filler words when we're communicating. And what you're doing when you're using those filler words is that you're actually showing that you don't have full confidence in what you're saying. Yeah. And those filler words could be anything from to do you know what I mean? To does that make sense to you? Yeah. And we all do that. And I identify it so much now. I was on the phone to a client yesterday, actually. And I was saying, do you know what I mean? And I was thinking, stop saying that. But it's really hard to stop doing it. But once you identify that you're doing it, you can go through the motion to stop doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think sometimes feedback is really crucial with that. So as something I've been through personally, I was, you know, I've always been in recruitment in one way or another, but I also was in HR for 2.5 years where, you know, you're dealing with directors, CEOs, CIOs, you know, real high level stakeholders. And I just felt like such a minority and I just would go in and my confidence was so low. I just felt as though, you know, speaking to these people who have 20 plus years experience and then me who just entered HR with, you know, a diploma and a year's experience, I just felt so out of my depth. So I used to finish a lot of my emails with, hopefully this makes sense, or let me know if this doesn't make sense to you. And I got a new HR manager who came in and said, stop doing that. What you're saying, of course it makes sense. Everything you've said, you've been so clear. You're doing that and you're doubting your ability within that email. And you're also opening a door for them to criticize you.
Absolutely.
And undermine what you're trying to say. Or maybe interpret it in a way that you didn't mean it. Because they can almost take advantage of the fact that you're not having that confidence. So that was a real eye-opener for me, and having that feedback, especially in a HR capacity where everything you says has so much depth and meaning, to really take on board and be very mindful of my language when you're speaking to those stakeholders.
Yeah.
And that really changed the way I operate.
That was amazing. What a great manager as well to identify that.
Yeah.
I've had a similar example, and I think when you first get into recruitment, you do a lot of BD. I mean, I still do BD now, obviously. But you get on the phone and you say, oh, it's just Naomi calling from such and such, and I've got this little timid voice and I'm saying, it's just me.
Yep.
And what that's doing is actually lacking confidence. And the person on the other end of the phone can feel that and hear that. And they think, well, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And so I actually had a manager say that to me too. Can you stop saying just Naomi?
Yeah.
You're not just Naomi, you're Naomi.
You're Naomi,
they
girl.
They need you. They want you.
Exactly.
And I was like, yeah, they do. And the energy that I brought to that conversation then, I used to pick up the phone and it's almost like the smile before you dial situation, and be like, they want to hear from me. I have an amazing candidate, but I also have a wealth of knowledge and experience. I'm going to recruit this role and I will fill it. And that person will speak to me for 20 minutes and they will give me the job.
Do you know what? I'm in awe of that confidence, because I wish we could all have that every day in recruitment. We just don't, right? But if we started every day with that pep talk, I think we'd do
it in the mirror.
This will happen for me. I am the best. And look, recruiters have a bit of a reputation for kind of thinking they're the best at everything. But look, I think in terms of that imposter syndrome, it's so important to have that confidence and have that chat with yourself. And remind yourself that you bring value and what you're bringing to the table is enough, if not more. But no, I love the confidence there. I think I might go away and steal that from you, to be honest.
There was actually a book that I read, and I forget the name now, but they were talking in the book about giving yourself a high five in the mirror every morning.
Yes.
And what that does is it's like, I am worthy of today. To be honest, there's so much to be said for that. But going back to working in kind of male-dominated industry as well, I think, whilst I work in a female-dominated industry, we are in recruitment in general in a male-dominated industry as a recruiter. So not just in the sectors that we recruit for, but in recruitment. And I know I had a really great female manager who was amazing, but she was saying to me that she had a lot of male managers that were kind of like almost thinking, well, she's not going to stay in recruitment, she's going to have babies and she's going to leave, so why should she get confident in what she's doing, because she's just going to leave the industry anyway. And so that's also a big problem as well. And also females just don't have as much confidence as what males do.
Which is sad, right? That's a big generalization, but it's also true. And look, I think going off the back of that, I went to an event, Professional Migrant Women, and it was awesome because I'm not from Australia, neither are you.
We are.
We're trying. But naturally, imposter syndrome can also come from being a migrant. Because in recruitment, are they going to undermine my ability to understand the market because I'm not Australian? And again, massive generalization. To be honest, I don't really feel that discrimination hugely, but going to an event that was held by Professional Migrant Women was really open. Well, it opened my eyes to see that the discrimination does happen a lot more than we think it does. And then on the side note, the government in Australia are trying really hard to improve the gender equality within business. So there is something called the Gender Equality Act that came out in 2020, and their first report happened in 2021. So I thought it would be really interesting to share with you a few stats between the difference of gender. So there's around 15.6% difference between men and women's salary. So this is 2021, okay? So there's this new report. It is wild. That's 19,000 on average a year difference. So there's a lot. I don't know. Who knows? But they are going to be releasing a 2023 report in February. So I'm definitely keen to see the difference and see.
We'll come back to you.
On that, pending. We'll make another episode. But no, it's huge. And I think but I also found, so there is less of a gap in ages 25 to 34. And I'm still not entirely sure why. And that goes between a 3.3% difference. So I'm not sure if that's because as we're going through life, they're modernizing policies and processes and that gender equality, and maybe that is showing more within that age bracket.
It could be a generational thing.
Absolutely, because the further along in life you are, the bigger the gap. So definitely seems to be a generation thing there, but hopefully that is going to minimize over time. And then I also found it really interesting that women make up around 66% of the workforce. However, only 45% are leaders and 38% are CEOs. Wow. So it just shows that workforce in general is very female dominated, but they're really underrepresented in those leadership roles. And does that come down to confidence? Does that come down to lifestyle choice? Does that come down to the fact that, we have to take maternity leave? I'm not sure. But I also found another really great quote that I really want to say to you, because it's from the Financial Review and it's from this month's edition. And it says, "We promote men based on potential, and women have to have already proven it to you." So I think that is so strong, because I actually see that a lot in the recruitment process. I know. See, I saw it, I was like, I can't leave this out. This is so crucial. And when I actually go through the process myself in recruitment, I actually see that in my day-to-day. I don't know if you find the same, but I find that when I am recruiting, a solution architect role, project manager role, and it's a man and they've got a lot of experience, you listen to the resume. You don't need proof. You don't need them to prove themselves. They've done it in black and white, whether it's true or not.
They could just made that up.
Oh, and we both know people do that.
Oh, 100%.
But when it comes to females, I don't know. I feel like they need a lot more from them. They need to know what they're doing in future. They need to ask those kind of questions. And it's almost like they have to prove themselves so much more. So I found that really hard hitting. And yeah, quite true. I don't know if you see that in your industry, but in IT, it's definitely getting better. I'm not slamming IT for being male dominated, because it's just been the way of the world. And maybe tech hasn't been as accessible to females as much as it has now.
Probably not even down to desirable as well.
100%.
The tech industry is always seen as being quite kind of computer focused.
Yep.
Women naturally, they like being around people. Maybe they think, oh, if I'm in tech, I'm going to be talking to computers, where I'm a people pleaser and I want to be in this industry.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually...
And it's a stereotype. Like, you think about all the movies that you watch. And
that's so true. There's always a tech guy.
Oh,
there's a tech girl, is there?
Do you remember like the IT crowd in the UK? Like that? And they were all tech guys, nerds. And they were seen to be male nerds.
Let's change that. I reckon we should...
Let's change it.
Let's do a new cartoon and all the women are female tech nerds.
We're now producers of a tech series.
That's another side hustle.
That's next year also.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think breaking the mold, breaking the stereotype, and really trying to reach out to more females in tech is important. And that is definitely happening. It is. And I work with extraordinary candidates, both male and female, and I'm very lucky. And with where I work, obviously I work in the government space, and it's really important for them to get it right, because they have to lead by example. So they are naturally improving that gap and that gender equality, and they have to do a lot of their reporting, and they're going to be included in that 2023 report. So
it will be interesting to see how that comes.
Absolutely. So they're going to have to put a big focus on that.
And I think as well, like going back to what you were saying about when you're speaking to men and women and they're applying for roles, women have a lot more self-doubt and anxiety.
100%.
And they think about what they can't do in jobs more than what men do. That's stereotyping, but a lot of men will come in with confidence. I can do this. This is what I bring to the table. I'm a strong blah, blah, blah. Whereas women will come on and they'll go, oh, well, you've mentioned this requirement. I don't have experience doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so they focus on that kind of self-doubt and they focus on the negativity. Not all women, but they focus on that negative side. And I know myself, back when I was applying for jobs, I would read into every little requirement. And if it said something that wasn't me, I was, I'm not going to be very good for the job.
Yeah.
But men, there is actually a stat that I will share. I don't have the stat on me, but I will share it elsewhere.
Give it a go.
But it was about men and women applying for jobs, and men have to hit, let's just say for argument's sake, 50% of the requirements and they'll apply. Women have to hit like 90 something, like so much more of the requirement.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is also an educational piece when we're working in an industry that is male dominant, but we want to see more females. Maybe it's educating us on how to do the job adverts or how to advertise for these roles to ensure that we're getting women coming through.
Yeah.
So maybe it is actually on us as well.
Absolutely.
To be like, these are the requirements that the client's giving me, but gosh, these are long. What can I actually, what are they happy to be flexible on? And then moving forward, say to them, we're going to advertise a role with only 5 of the requirements that you've given because you can teach on the rest.
Yeah.
And if a woman looks at that job ad, they're going to go, well, I don't hit all of those.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you mentioned that because I've had training, albeit a little while ago now, so it may have changed slightly, but obviously Seek is a platform that we all use to advertise our roles. It's where it probably gets the most attraction. It's one place you can go and find a job. And I had a conversation with one of the account managers at Seek, and he said, talking about your ads, you don't want to have points. You don't want to have more than 6 points because when you do, it actually deters women.
Yes.
So 6 points seems to be a sweet spot. It's like 6 to 7 points. I think I had on an ad 8 points. And he said, there's just not a chance. And I found that in like real life. So having, a business analyst role, I would get a lot of male applications, which is great because ultimately I'm looking for someone who can do the job and do it well, right? I'm not having it so much at the forefront of my mind, but I didn't realize that the ads I was posting were deterring women. I just thought that was just what it was, and that was the way that the industry and the market was. But actually there's a way that we can write our ads. There's a way that we can frame them to be appealing to women. I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe we just like short and snappy. We're busy. We just want to be on the move.
More than 6 points. We're thinking about something else. We're on to the bath we're going to buy later on.
Correct. Text it out, whatever.
But that's a really interesting. That's really interesting. And I actually had a similar training with Seek a couple of years back now, which they were redoing their training on the advertisement front, and they mentioned the same thing to me. And they were actually saying that obviously back then you still need to sell the benefits of the role, but they were saying that you should focus more on what this role is, what this person can get out of this role rather than the requirements. But sometimes when you do look at advertisements, all it's about is about the requirements. But
key selection criteria.
If they just see all of these lengthy things that they're going to have to do.
No.
So, yeah.
I definitely wouldn't.
No, that's very true. That's very true. And so in terms of imposter syndrome and how to, kind of overcome imposter syndrome, I think, we'll be chatting till the cows come home about how to overcome it. But there are ways that we can communicate with people. And you and I talk about this a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
And we help each other and hype each other up.
Absolutely, you have to. You have to hype each other up. I think in the industry, and especially in the current market, we're all feeling the pinch, and it can be really easy to get in your own head and doubt yourself, have the anxiety. No one wants that Sunday night anxiety when they're going to work on the Monday and they just don't know what to do with themselves, especially in a quiet market. So I think sometimes the imposter syndrome can creep in even over the weekend when you're trying not to think about it and have your downtime, and then that just snowballs, right? So I think the challenge is to overcome it, and the ways that we cope with it are really important, especially at the minute.
100%. And it's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And it's having people around you that can hype you up, but also be your mentors, your silent mentors. And I know that there are a lot of people that I speak to that are maybe in different industries to what I'm in, or different level to what, I'm in, but it's about finding support in other people.
Yeah.
And also seeking that support as well. Everybody struggles with imposter syndrome. We're all human. We all struggle with it.
Yeah.
And it's not something that needs to be a taboo subject or something that needs to be you don't need to be embarrassed about feeling those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just about communicating with other people and challenging that negative self-talk as well, and sharing a lot about kind of boosting your confidence.
Yeah. We, again, we had a speaker, we had Greg Savage come to see us. Very kind of larger than life character.
Very charismatic.
Very charismatic. Told us a lot. It was like an hour seminar that turned into 3, so it was quite lengthy, but it was very helpful. He's got a long career in recruitment. He's seen it all. He's worked with really good recruiters and really bad recruiters, and experienced it from the ground up. So, a message that we took from him is you are the expert.
Yeah. I love that.
And I really forget to remember that sometimes.
Yeah.
And me and a colleague of mine, she very sweet, I was on the phone and I think maybe she could hear in my voice I wasn't fully confident in what I was saying. I was kind of going around in circles. I was saying a lot. And using the terminology that was said really undermines what we're trying to say. So she, very sweet, she put "you are the expert" on a Post-it note and stuck it on my computer screen.
Sweet.
And it is so sweet. But it reminded me, I was like, oh my God, you're so right. I've done this for so long, albeit I've done different recruitment in different companies, but it's the same process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you take the time to know your market and understand your market, then of course you're the expert. You're going to know more than anyone else.
100%.
And working with hiring managers, again, speaking to another colleague, he said, we have to remember that 98% of their time is spent on something totally different.
Yes.
We are 2%.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. It's just business. So we have to remember that we're not their everything. It's not personal. It's just that, if they're rushing us off the phone or they don't want to hear what we have to say in that exact moment, it's just probably because they have something much bigger to do that day.
Yeah, they're forgetting about the conversation 10 minutes after we've spoken to them.
Yeah, and we hold on to it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on today, Cheri. It's been great to chat to you and hear about your imposter syndrome.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been great to be here. Thanks, Naomi.